During the early years of the Revolution, after several major defeats, the United States was losing the war for independence. However, this would change during the fall of 1777, after the Battle of Freeman's Farm and Bemis Heights, where the Americans forced the British to surrender at Saratoga, marking a major turning point in the Revolutionary War. The Battle of Saratoga would become one of the most important battles in the Revolution. The use of propaganda played a pivotal role throughout the Revolution. One of the 18th century's leading propaganda creators was Thomas Paine. 1775 and 76 were years that seemed to be full of military defeats and strategic retreats for the rebels. These disappointing results left Americans feeling hopeless and their desire for independence. Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense to encourage the colonists that their revolution was justified. He detailed the evils of tyranny and challenged them to consider the changes a victory might bring. His message was written in simple language for the common man, outlining a dream of political voice for the lower classes. As the military struggles continued, Paine published the first pamphlet of the American Crisis, a series of 16 political writings distributed in 1776 to 1783. However, this first one was historically the most influential of them all. In it, he encourages the participants of the revolution to continue despite the hardships, writing, "These are the times that try men's souls. He that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered." Without the work of Thomas Paine, it is possible that the revolution may not have made it to the Battle of Saratoga in September and October of 1777. Instead, the fighting raged on with a vision of independence in full force. The perseverance of the patriots would be rewarded with a victory at Saratoga. With this show in military ability, the French had enough confidence to become allies with the American colonies, which would change the course of the war, and the victory further fueled American propaganda that victory was well within their grasp. The chain of events that would lead to the Battle of Saratoga began when British generals William Howe and John Burgoyne created a plan which would combine the power of their armies and destroy the American forces which had gathered near Albany under the leadership of General Horatio Gates. The British plan called for a three-pronged attack where Burgoyne would travel south from Canada, Howe would travel north, and Colonel Barry St. Ledger would lead a third army through the Mohawk Valley to meet in Albany. This plan, however, would begin to fall apart when Howe attacked Philadelphia instead of traveling north as he said he would. To introduce the topic of tactics, I was able to land an interview with a horse that served at the Battle of Saratoga as a British dragoon, led by some of my interns.
So I heard you were in the Battle of Saratoga. Can you tell me about that experience?
What a great learning experience from a horse who actually served. Translations were provided by the School of Equine Linguistics. Now, onto the overall battle tactics used by commanders at this battle. During the Battle of Saratoga, George Washington was not present for this battle. He did, however, contribute to it in a pretty significant way. His focus was on the Howe attack over in Philadelphia. However, he did send aid to Horatio Gates in the form of Benedict Arnold, who would become the hero of Saratoga. Upon his arrival, Arnold was sent to Fort Stanwix, where through deception and cunning he managed to turn back St. Ledger's army. The battle itself is split into two smaller battles, the Battle of Freeman's Farms and Bemis Heights. Freeman's Farms began on September 19th, 1777, and it involved British General Burgoyne moving south from Canada to try to take the New England colonies. His plan was to meet up with other British forces coming from New York. Continental forces under Gates and Arnold pestered British forces from Freeman's Farms, forcing an engagement. The British did end up victorious, however they sustained approximately double the casualties of the Continental Army. The second battle, the Battle of Bemis Heights, was on October 7th. This is where Benedict Arnold defies the orders of Gates. Arnold wanted to take the battle to the British, whereas Gates wanted to wait and fight defensively. Arnold led his troops and decimated the British lines, though Arnold himself was wounded in this conflict. Following this loss, the British tried to hold out for aid from the other British forces in New York. When it seemed as though no aid was coming, the British made terms for a surrender. The terms of surrender given to Burgoyne and his army were that they were to return to Britain and swore they would never again serve in America. To talk about the equipment both sides used, we were able to personally ask a British officer for his expertise on the matter. And today we're talking to a British officer who actually served in the Battle of Saratoga. How are you doing today, sir? Thanks for asking. I'm doing great, and I'm so happy to be here today. What do you have for me? So, tell me, what kind of equipment did the British Army use in the Battle of Saratoga? What we used in the British Army was the Brown Bess musket. That is a 75 caliber musket. It's a pretty good one. It only misfires like 1 out of 6 shots, which is pretty great for that time. And our Prussian allies, they used the Potsdam musket. It's basically the exact same thing as the Brown Bess, except they didn't have a foresight on there, so they had a little bit of a harder time aiming. Yes, yes, yes. And the Americans, what kind of stuff did they use? The Americans. They use what do they use just whatever they could get. A few of them had brown bess muskets from before the war, but there was a couple companies during that. They used some like small caliber rifle, which was like 45 caliber, really small. They could hit pretty accurately, which will give them that. But I mean, a lot of them have bayonets, and they had so many issues. Like, oh my god, they just. Now, in spite of that officer's sass, we'll move on to the British retreat and the aftermath from the battle. Following General Burgoyne's surrender at Saratoga, the northern arm of the British Army was in disarray. In their victory, the Americans had essentially secured the northern states of the new republic. This victory fundamentally shifted the war from a more traditional style European war into a more rural guerrilla war that would take place in the less populated southern United States. This British defeat would leave an everlasting scar on General Burgoyne, who was forced to return in shame to England where he would never again receive a military commission of any kind. In contrast, Saratoga made a hero out of General Benedict Arnold, who, after his failure at Quebec, had fallen out of favor with both Congress and General Washington. Later, he would repay his award of the command of West Point by plotting to hand it over to the British, earning him their reputation as the worst traitor in American history. Finally, with the defeat of the British at Saratoga, the French saw in the Americans a real opportunity at victory. In defeating the major world power, the Americans had gone from hopeless rebels to a worthy ally for the French to exact their revenge for the 7 Years' War. After the American victory, the battle at Saratoga would become one of the most important victories in the war. When the French learned of the British defeat at Saratoga and heard rumors that the British were attempting to pursue for peace, they realized that the Americans had a chance at winning the war. Realizing that they could potentially gain from allying with the Americans, the French worked with American diplomats to create the Treaty of Alliance, which formalized the alliance and officially recognized the sovereignty of the United States. While the French mostly fought in the Caribbean, diverting British forces away from the United States, the most important thing to come from the alliance was when the French Navy and combined French and American forces trapped the British General Cornwallis at Yorktown and forced the surrender, putting an end to the fighting. The battle at Saratoga would begin a chain of events which would lead the United States gaining their independence from the British, making it one of the most important battles in the war.